In 26 days, a New Zealand director could face $500,000 in personal criminal liability, not for recklessness, for negligence. 3 regulatory deadlines are converging right now. Most boards haven't started. Here is what that means for your board. The ManageMyHealth breach affected up to 127,000 patients. At the time of that breach, the IOD confirmed there was no functioning board, not under-resourced, no board at all. The incoming framework closes that gap directly. Director criminal liability, mandatory reporting within 24 hours. A proposed corporate penalty ceiling of $5 million or 2% of turnover. The 19th of April, the 30th of April, the 1st of May. 3 deadlines, 1 window. If the ManageMyHealth breach had occurred after May 2026, what would the personal consequences have been for your directors?
Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Hamberger Report, Cyber Guide for New Zealand Boards. I'm Andreas Hamberger. In February 2026, the Institute of Directors published an analysis every board in New Zealand should read. ManageMyHealth suffered one of the most significant health data breaches in our history in December 2025. According to the IOD's analysis, MMH had no functioning board at the time of the breach, not an under-resourced board, not a board without the right skills, no board. That single fact frames the regulatory urgency this episode addresses. Containment stops ongoing harm. Technical remediation identifies breach vectors, but technical resolution does not restore stakeholder trust. Citizens whose data was compromised want assurance that their interests remain central throughout the response. Maori partners whose taonga was affected need confirmation that cultural protocols were honored. Recovery is where organizations either rebuild trust or discover that technical competence cannot compensate for governance failure. The incoming regulatory framework addresses that gap directly. 3 deadlines are converging. The DPMC consultation on a mandatory cybersecurity regime for critical infrastructure closes the 19th of April, 14 days from publication. The proposed regime covers approximately 200 entities across 7 essential sectors: communications and data infrastructure, defense, energy, finance, health, transport, and water. For organizations within scope, director personal criminal liability is proposed at up to $100,000 for serious breaches and up to $500,000 for critical breaches defined as negligent, reckless, or knowing non-compliance. Corporate penalties up to $5 million or 2% of annual turnover, whichever is greater. A 1-year grace period before enforcement begins gives organizations time to build capability. It does not give them time to start thinking about it. On the 30th of April, the MCSS first reporting cycle closes. Approximately 200 mandated entities must demonstrate CSCMM Level 2 compliance. On the 17th of March 2026, the Privacy Commissioner used NCSC standards as a defensible baseline for Privacy Act compliance assessment. That statement bridges 2 regulatory regimes. On the 1st of May, Information Privacy Principle 3A takes effect. Agencies collecting personal information from sources other than the individual must take reasonable steps to notify the affected person. Organizations without complete data mapping cannot comply because they cannot identify which collection instances trigger the notification obligation. 2 frameworks from this series sourcebook address accountability directly. The right of first notification requires that Maori partners receive breach notification within the same time frame regulatory authorities when taonga data is affected within the Privacy Act's 72-hour window, not after broader public disclosure. Discovering breach details through media reporting rather than direct organizational communication signals that Maori partners are stakeholders to be managed, not treaty partners deserving respect. The reputational damage from delayed notification typically exceeds the harm from the initial breach. Implementation requires 4 operational capabilities: 24/7 contact arrangements with Maori governance representatives, pre-established briefing templates balancing transparency against honesty about what remains uncertain, cultural protocols developed during calm periods, and parallel investigation briefings, ensuring Maori representatives receive updates at the same time as internal leadership. The Citizen Trust Scorecard provides governance-level metrics across 5 dimensions: notification timeliness and clarity, remediation accessibility, accountability transparency, cultural responsiveness, and future trust trajectory. A board receiving reports that systems are fully operational, but trust scores remain severely depressed, understands that recovery is incomplete despite technical success. Technical metrics demonstrate competence. The scorecard measures what ultimately determines whether stakeholders trust the organization going forward. The scripted war room simulation enables boards to test their Hour Zero protocol before real incidents create consequences governance failures cannot afford. 5 characteristics define effective simulations: time compression that creates real pressure, incomplete information forcing decisions despite uncertainty, escalating complexity with multiple simultaneous challenges, cultural authenticity with Maori stakeholder representation tested under pressure, and no do-overs enforcing consequences for decisions made. The simulation's value emerges in the debrief. Directors examine decision quality under pressure, information management, partnership authenticity, stakeholder primacy, and governance sustainability. The compensation framework structures stakeholder redress across 3 tiers. Tier 1, direct harm compensation for quantifiable impacts, reimbursement of financial losses, and credit monitoring provision. Tier 2, breach impact recognition, acknowledging the stress and loss of control that data breaches create, even when direct financial harm does not occur. Tier 3, cultural harm acknowledgement for Maori data breaches, recognizing that Taonga breach creates harms that financial compensation alone cannot address. Boards should require management to present proposed compensation frameworks during incident response planning, not as an afterthought once technical work is complete. The Kordia 2026 Cybersecurity Report documents the threat context. 45% of New Zealand organizations experienced a significant cyber incident in 2025. Business email compromise accounted for 40% of those incidents. The median cost of a cyber incident reached 110,000 New Zealand dollars, a 25% increase on 2024. Ransomware affected 12% of organizations. Against that backdrop, consider the enforcement gap. Under the current Privacy Act, the maximum penalty for a privacy breach is 10,000 New Zealand dollars. The proposed critical infrastructure penalty ceiling is $5 million or 2% of turnover. That contrast defines the scale of the structural reset. New Zealand currently ranks 49th on the National Cybersecurity Index, the lowest position among 5 country council partners. And the Institute of Directors Director Sentiment Survey found that fewer than half of directors believe their boards have the right skills to manage increasing complexity. That finding, placed alongside the MMH No Board case study, defines the governance deficit the incoming regime is designed to address. The Boardroom Readiness Quiz gives your board a measure of Hour Zero protocol readiness across 15 questions. 12 or more yes responses indicates crisis-ready governance. 8 to 11 indicates capability under construction with identifiable gaps. 4 to 7 requires urgent attention. 3 or fewer is material liability. The questions cover 4 capability areas: crisis decision frameworks, red line matrix with documented trigger conditions, and tested kill switch capability, containment and upstream protocols, kill switch operational readiness tested within the last 12 months, upstream contagion assessment protocols, once-only dependency visibility, stakeholder engagement and notification, right of first notification protocols aligned with the 72-hour Privacy Act window, Citizen Trust Scorecard measuring recovery through stakeholder-focused metrics, compensation framework ready across 3 tiers. Testing and continuous improvement, war room simulation conducted within the last 12 months with full board participation and documented debrief. The Hour Zero timeline rapid reference framework covers the first 24 hours of a systemic breach across 5 phases, from alert and assessment at T+0 through quarantine and containment, notification preparation, formal disclosure, to stabilization and recovery planning at T+18 hours. The 3 deadlines are not independent compliance events, they form a sequence. The consultation defines the framework that mandates reporting and creates director liability. The MCSS reporting deadline demonstrates whether the governance floor exists. IPP3A tests whether organizations actually know where their data is. Organizations that arrive at these deadlines with mature governance are not in compliance anxiety. They are in confirmation mode, confirming that frameworks already built are now demonstrable. Organizations discovering these deadlines for the first time have 26 days to make a meaningful start, not to close the full gap, to demonstrate intent, build the evidential record, and begin the documented remediation journey that regulators and courts assess when things go wrong. The MMH case is instructive. That organization did not fail because its board made poor decisions during the breach. It failed at the governance level because there was no board to make decisions. The incoming regime addresses that failure directly. Director liability is not an abstract risk. It is personal. In the most serious cases, it is criminal, and it requires that there be a board, engaged, skilled, and able to demonstrate oversight. Part 9 turns to the accountability reckoning, the architectural debt audit, and what converting incident lessons into structural governance improvement requires. That is the Hamberger report for today. If this was useful, subscribe and hit the like button. It helps more professionals find the channel. You will find links to everything we covered in the description below. I am Andreas Hamberger, and I will see you tomorrow.
Like and subscribe.